The first time somebody comes and looks at an LED screen or wants to purchase an LED screen, the decision has to be made whether it's an indoor screen or an outdoor screen, how bright the screen's going to be, and what the viewing distances are going to be. So quite often we'll have customers who want to deploy a screen in a retail environment. The thing that they need to recognize is within that environment, most people aren't going to be any more than 10, 15, maybe 25 meters away where they're going to see it if it's installed indoors. If they want to install it outside on the looking out to the street, the resolution they need is relative to the brightness. So if somebody is putting a screen behind the cash point in a retailer, the goal of that screen is to show the product that the clients are coming and looking at. If they put it in the window, the screen, while it might still be the same high resolution, very tight pixel pitch, it needs to be bright enough to be seen out on the street with the ambient light. If it's an outdoor screen that's going on top of a building or possibly in a stadium, the tight pixel pitch probably isn't appropriate, but the brightness is very appropriate and they need to be able to see it from the other side of the stadium. It's a balance of the need to see what's being shown and how much information you want to display on that screen and the quality of the information. The other concern that we raise with all of our clients, first off when buying an LED screen, is what content is going to go on the screen. So is it a scoreboard, is it data or text, or is it going to be images? Deciding that and what quality you're going to put onto the screen is as important as the technology of what pixel pitch is going on the screen.
The first thing that we do, like Bob says, is try and actually understand the application that it's going into and then start to make the customer see the technology, because unless they see 2mm versus 3mm with their own eyes, with their own content, they don't really understand the cost difference. That, you know, that it's not just a case of like an LCD screen, bigger is more expensive. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that with LED. You know, there's a lot of other balances that can affect the cost. So, and what we're finding is that it doesn't need to be really expensive anymore. You know, for that 3.2mm and below, down to say 2mm, it is becoming a lot more affordable now, even in a retail environment. And they also love the customization of sizes. You know, they're not limited to a 16:9 screen on a wall that looks like a TV. You know, they're very much, you know, taken aback by the fact, like you say, the brightness, the resolution, but also these custom sizes. And it doesn't have to break the bank either, which I think is why we're seeing a lot more of it deployed nowadays. Again, it's becoming a lot more affordable now compared to even it was maybe 2 years ago.
When I started out, prices on 10mm screens were anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a square meter. And I can go to a manufacturer now and find 10mm screen at $1,200 a square meter.
Why is that?
Component prices have gone down, power supply prices have gone down, the unusual number of additional manufacturers in the market now. So there's such great competition in the market that I've got a list of 140 manufacturers, 20 or 30 of them who I class as good manufacturers, including the original manufacturers like Barco, Mitsubishi, Lighthouse. The premium brands have had to adjust their pricing to compete with the manufacturers out of Shenzhen, out of Eastern Europe. So the pricing is coming down because there is more competition in the market.
I think it's worth saying that LED, this direct lit LED, is not a new technology. It's been around for many, many years, but what has changed as the pixel pitch has improved is the options, basically much greater options in terms of the environments that they can go in, basically the markets they suit. Bob mentioned outdoor, obviously indoors where the big pull is at the market at the moment, and you look at the manufacturers that do have LCD screens, all fighting for market share, basically, or a good LED product. The great thing about the options and the actual technology, you can focus a product like an LED product on the verticals that you're actually selling it to. So you can have a product that is suitable for a rental market that wouldn't be suitable for a fixed installation market, and a product that's basically designed for fixed install that wouldn't work naturally on an outdoor, etc., etc. It goes on. We've got a vertically aligned sales approach, So we've actually managed to develop a vertically aligned product approach to complement those markets. So whether it's front install, front service that you might need in a retail environment, and you wouldn't need the processing or the expensive catches that you get on a rental product. So you can actually make a product that doesn't need to be of a specific specification, that is overpriced for a particular marketplace, that you can actually, it becomes affordable because the options are greater. If you look at, I think Bob's been involved in this one, what the screens you have at Piccadilly and how hard they drive those screens 24/7. They're outdoor, they're in the elements, and that's a different design of a product that you'd be putting into Mac, Superdry, basically these retailers that have got them going on for 8 hours, 12 hours a day. So the key thing about LED, it's not a new technology. It's been around for many years, but the options, obviously, as the technology has improved, become greater. Therefore, that's driven the price down as well.
As a consultancy, we look across a range of display products. So we look at projection, LCD. We were fortunate that we caught onto what we call narrow pixel pitch, but 3 mm and below LED space 3 or 4 years ago now. In fact, Stuart helped us early on figure out what was going on. I'd say a couple of things to pick up on here. The first is on cost, and I think if you look at the upstream component supply chain, that is changing incredibly quickly. A lot of the SMD packages were coming out of Everlight in Taiwan, and they were quite expensive, and they were controlling supply. Now you see guys like NationStar, to a point, Forest Lighting coming out of China as well, starting to compete. So we're seeing on an individual package level, kind of 40% year-on-year price decline at a component level. So when you're looking at that straight off the bat, pricing is going to naturally fall as long as it's passed down the supply chain. And then I think if you see what's happening at a brand level, and you're seeing most of the major international display brands coming on board as well. Some of the Chinese guys, signing up good distribution deals or even setting up physical offices themselves. So you see that whole competitive landscape changing as well. And I'd also say to that, and linking in some of the vertical market points here, if you look at the way that the product's evolved, from not quite a standing start, but 2013 there was really not a lot of narrow pixel about. Now we're nearly settling on 27.5-inch cabinet sizing. So there's still a lot of customization going on, of course, but once you start to see some of that maturity in product, then it's easier to install in theory. I'm sure Bob will have a few points to make on that. But the mount guys can get involved. You start bringing down the whole solution cost, which I think is another important part. We're seeing cableless solutions coming down now as well. So in a rental market, it's a lot easier, again in theory. So I think there's a lot happening at a product level and at a supply level, which is changing things. I'll give you a couple of stats from our side that by 2020, we see narrow pixel pitch, so 3 mm and below, taking over 40% value share if you combine all of the LCD video wall products, rear projection and LED together, rising from about 11% this year to 43-44% by 2020, which is quite aggressive, but that is the way that we see this product going. It's moved past disruptor stage now. It's here to stay. The
interest coming back into PSCo at the moment is from all of our system integrators wanting to learn about this technology and understand what the true opportunity for them and their business is, which is fantastic. It takes me back to LCD video wall 8-9 years ago when the guys, Samsungs and the NECs, were bringing it to market then. They know it's coming. A lot
of the integrators who have been putting in LCD or cubes or as far back as CRT screens 20 years ago are suddenly discovering that it is a cost-effective solution. It is flexible. You can customize to size, shape, power consumption, lack of ventilation in some cases. And the LED solutions are a solution that can fit into virtually any situation. The cost has come down enough that the integrators who are doing it, I think the scope, the range of integrators we're seeing, it's rental companies, smaller rental companies, audiovisual companies, some who were doing wedding events with little projectors are now buying small LED screens. And just the range of locations where you see LED being used is expanding because more people understand it. Maybe not the nuts and bolts like I do, but certainly in the usability of it and the reliability and the durability of the products.
Basically, we have to focus on the application with our system integrator to understand exactly what environment it's going into and what they're trying to achieve. Because you can't, it's very difficult now to actually just provide a quotation over the phone or send basically a price or a guide price. So it comes down, it almost, initially from what our customers are used to, it's almost like it's sales prevention because we've got so many questions before we can give an answer. But that's really to make sure we're actually specifying the right thing, and we take that really seriously to make sure we understand that we're not overpricing a solution, or basically we're not underpricing a solution. We've got to be the right solution for that customer, for the environment.
Yeah, I think what we're finding in retail as well is traditionally where you might put a video wall in, the retailers don't want that anymore. You know, we've heard this phrase in retail recently called digital blindness. And
digital blindness.
Yeah, so there's a new one. But and you could go to your Selfridges, your Harvey Nicks, and everyone's got a TV screen, everyone's got a video wall. So it's kind of, well, what's next? What else can I do to make me
Less is more
better, stand out? And again, you know, the natural thing in retail is to replace light boxes. The retailers don't want to replace a light box with a video wall with bezels on. It ruins their content. It doesn't look very good, to be quite honest. So the fact now that we can provide them with a custom shape which will probably fit their existing fixtures or their existing light box sizes, and it doesn't look like a TV on the wall with loads of bezels, all of a sudden they're becoming a lot more interested in it, because for them, they just see it as a light box that can play video. That's it, it's an animated light box, rather than they actually see this a bit more of a world that they understand, rather than a video wall with lots of complicated brackets and I now have to think about the bezels. It's a digital light box that you can play your animated content on and not have to think about bezels and all of those types of compensations. So it's definitely an application conversation, definitely. And each quote, not that it's a custom quote every time, but as you know, everyone said here, there's so many environmental considerations that you have to take into place. Even, you know, can we get behind it for rear service and install, or is it front only? There's lots of things that we have to do with the shop fitters and the designers just to make them aware of how it works. But because it's a lot more modular than a TV on a bracket, you know, from our point of view, it certainly allows us to become a lot more creative and adaptable for the retailer's needs.
I think Adam and Stuart have touched on a good point, and it's the content, it's the digital blindness. You can replace a poster with a digital screen, but if all you're doing is putting a poster on the digital screen, you're not getting any value for your money. So it needs to engage people, and it's one of the words everybody's bantering about now is customer engagement, digital engagement. There's a balance between engaging the customers, getting the customer's attention, or getting your own service people's attention. If you're in a phone center, a call-in center, and people are looking at the statistics on the wall, if there's not something interesting, if it's not updating regularly, people really, it's just another poster on the wall. If you're delivering good content to the screen, you can avoid digital blindness, or if anybody's been to Times Square recently, I call it digital waterboarding. There's just so much information coming out, and you're just so overwhelmed that you don't know whose product is where, and you really don't come away with any memory of what that product is. And for retail, that's the most important thing. Do you remember the product? Do you remember where it's being sold? And if you're using video, is it more memorable than just a poster on the wall?
Digital waterboarding, I'm going to remember that actually.
I'll just chip in there as well. I think one of the things that we've not mentioned so far, according to our research, corporate market is absolutely massive. You know, in terms of foyers, starting to see some installations going into boardrooms for the first time, replacing old rear projection cube, particularly in the city, and video wall, in terms of LCD video wall, now not really considered. So we're starting to see narrow pixel pitch going into corporate. I don't know whether you guys have seen much of that.
I was wondering about where LCD was.
But that's definitely a vertical control room applications. That's now starting seriously to be spoken about, which is kind of rear projection cube domain. A lot of that happening in China, but we're starting to see some of that happen in Europe and the US as well. So I don't think, sometimes I think as an industry, in terms of display industry, we're kind of blindsided a little bit by retail and out of home. And I think actually if you look across some of the other applications, you know, corporate in particular is a serious opportunity, and it's happening right now.
Yeah, point well made, Chris, thanks very much, because I suppose the retail is a more glamorous element, a more glamorous application which shows off the best of this stuff, isn't it? But as you say...
So basically from a corporate perspective where you're trying to hit the resolutions, basically we're finding a lot of people saying they want an HD screen, basically in the corporate world. So basically that dictates the size of the actual panel based on the size of the pixel pitch, and that will dictate what your options are in terms of your product lineup. And this is where the start of the challenge sort of begins, really, is people are used to specifying HD, or they want basically quad HD, or basically, and it comes from a resolution. So the corporate market comes from resolution. So they're trying to basically get their PC set up in their boardroom, and they want to do a PowerPoint presentation. And that's where you're coming from, as we were saying, basically understanding how they're going to be using it to ensure we specify the right product for that. Retail's been quite glamorous within the display world for about 5-6 years. Obviously, they've been spending a lot of money in that, but the corporate world is obviously is always one. Obviously, for a company like us, is always the biggest vertical that we actually service. So understanding how they're going to be using it and when they're going to be using it is absolutely key. And they talk a different language, completely different language to the rental guys and the retail guys. The retail guys have a hole that they need to fill. The rental guys have got live events, and it's lots of different applications and lots of different things. And the corporate guys basically want to replace an existing system of some description. So they've got basically an existing shape and size, but they've got to hit a resolution.
Corporate's got that money, it's a nice change. It's good to do those projects.
How knowledgeable are they when it comes to requirements?
The AV teams are usually very knowledgeable in the bigger corporate environments, the banks, the finance. In the city, the AV teams are very knowledgeable.
PSCO is the LED specialist within the Midwich group, but basically we have a projects team that basically will review all of the technologies. So they will review LCD video wall, basically, they will review the projection options that are out there. And we really do encourage that, because the key thing is to specify the right technology for the application.
LCD is still a very usable, very useful. It's all around us here. We're surrounded by it here more than LED. I don't think it's going to go away tomorrow. I think the competitiveness, we're going to see a consolidation of some of the manufacturers and some of the quality of what's delivered, but it's still a big player, whereas we all thought projection was dead 5 years ago. LCD, LED, and projection are still all being considered by all of the clients we deal with.